What you writing, Ellie?
Digression Bar 27. On the clapper.
You know, I always like, one of the things I have to do is I mark where the cuts are when I edit the video, so there'll be little cue marks, and I have to call this something, and I hate calling it a clapper, because I don't know, that just seems weird. So I call it clapboard, but that's way longer. Digression Bar. So this is the basic setup for the podcast. This is what we used to use. I guess I still use it. These are Vixia HF R700 Canon cameras. These are just like basic camcorders. And I had one per person, and this is like how I do all of the shots. They're really simple, but I really wanted to upgrade because they always felt super like personal camcorder-y. Like I think they all, since they're the same brand, they all have this thing called baby mode. So you can like point it at your baby, and if it's like, it sees motion, it'll record it to make like home videos. And like, that's not useful. It makes me feel like I don't have like a real camera. Then as for microphones, I use two. I don't actually know what these are called. I have this Audio-Technica ATR 2100. It's a USB and an XLR. This is like the first one I ever got. And it's like amazing. And then there's like the first thing that was like a gotcha for me recording is there's like an on and off switch. So if you always see the podcast, I always give this to me just because I'm so paranoid that someone's gonna be accidentally messing with their mic and like turn it off, and then I just don't have anything. And then this is the other one. I have no idea what this is. This is like a $15 mic, and it's just like super stable, and it's been what I've been using for a long time. I got two of these. So then our basic setup is I have these mic stands. Then I have everything mounted on several one of these. This is just like an Amazon basic tripod. Again, these are like super cheap, and it just holds the camera. We don't move them. We don't have any cameramen, so we just basically put them at like head height, put them pointed at the people, and go from there. The next basic thing I have is this, also courtesy of Amazon, I think. This was actually surprisingly hard to find. This is a clapper or clapboard. I use this to say what the thing I'm shooting is, and then sync. So just go 3, 2, 1, and that lets me go into my editor, and you just basically line up the the audio waveforms, and you can make sure the videos line up. And generally speaking, that's actually really accurate. This is like the thing that surprisingly I waited the longest and saved me the most time, because syncing was always a huge issue. We used to do it off of a clap, but it's one of those things you don't think of as being hard, because when you're in the editor, it's hard to see the exact moment of the clap, because like as you come closer and closer, you end up like with this half second where you're like hitting and rebounding, where you're not sure where it's hitting, and this like completely takes away that issue. This is one of the things that was surprisingly hard to find, because when you search for this, every single one you find is either an actual professional one that's like $500 and uses like a electrical input and a time code, and it's sensitive to the cameras and it marks when you clap it, or it's like a joke one you get to like a birthday party as like a prop and it doesn't actually function. Whereas this was like, when I finally found it, it was awesome. Just a little wide erase. Then for the microphones, I have this. This is a XLR cord that goes from the mics all the way up the mic stands, and then it converts it into a headphone jack, because that's the actual input that these cameras take. This means that this is actually like a surprisingly easy issue to solve, but it let everyone have their own audio feed. So in post, I can go in, and if certain people like cough or nudge the microphone, I can cut out them specifically. Whereas if I did just like everything into one camera like I thought I was gonna do, it would just, you can't get rid of it. As for lights, I have, I guess, 3 main sources of light. The first one is the sun. So the first one's basically the sun, because it's by far the best light source, and it means we can basically only film during the day. You can actually see this in the very first podcast where we did that at like 11 p.m. at night. You can tell, like, even with all the lights I had then, and I have more now, you just physically can't light this space in any good way without having that major component. So it's actually something I try to do, is do it during the day when it's bright, because even if it's like really overcast or it's like going down, you can tell in the podcast that it's just like not lit. Otherwise, I have 2 main ones. I have these small ones I got, I think, with my green screen, but they're just basically lights. These are like super cheap as well, because they're ultimately, it's just like a light bulb socket on some like metal scaffolding. And these come with these umbrellas because it's meant to like kind of splay out for a green screen. but they're kind of nice. This is like one of the first things that was an eccentric purchase, I think, because I know like having these for the podcast, like they just seem like it reminded me of like when you're in school and getting like your phone taken, just those umbrella lights that do the flash. And these are the first ones I had, and I think I had these on podcast number 1 or 2 or so. And they seemed so bright when I got them, but like I said, it's actually really hard to light this space, so they don't seem nearly enough now. But I put them in on the sides just to kind of help light things up a little bit more. The next one is these giant bulbs. It's basically the same thing. This is what they look like when they're all together. They take probably the longest to actually do the setup for. But you have to I have to pull out the stand, put the stand down, put this on, pop it open, like so. Put the light bulb in, put it on, put the cover on, plug it in. They work great. They're by far they're the most intimidating part of the podcast, about the podcast when you sit down and you have these giant box lights. But even then they feel like they're not enough. But they're so good, and I'm so annoyed at the darkness of my apartment. They're one of the few things I'll purposely leave up just because it's I like having them out. They actually light stuff well. It's good daylight quality light you can just turn on and just show everywhere. So this is what the box lights look when they are set up. They're just on a stand with this little cover to help diffuse it, because without it, these massive bulbs they cause these terrible shadows because they're so bright. Anything they don't touch, it's really harsh. With these, it makes it a little bit better, and this is something where I don't technically need these, but the main reason I kind of like to include them is you don't go blind. Because I don't think I had these on originally when we first used them, and it obviously became a big issue is no one could see because you're staring at this thing for an hour. Here's the full test new setup. We got 2 of the Vixia camcorders and the new one. And I'm trying this new 2-person setup to see if it can help me edit stuff. I'm going to talk about this on the podcast itself. So now that we're ready to actually go, we can go ahead and get started. This is one of the more annoying things I have to do so I blast the AC because it gets super hot in here, but it's loud, so I gotta turn this off. But that's not all that's loud in my apartment. I have this mini fridge. Gotta unplug that. I'm gonna shock myself because I'm focused too much on recording. And then there's this one, which is also loud. Luckily I don't have to go behind there, but I have to turn it off here. And then I just have to sit and wait for the AC to actually turn off before we can start. Turn this one on. This one on. And this one, where I don't know what the record button is. All right. So now we just got to confirm that all the cameras can see Ellie as she syncs. We're good. All right, Ellie, you want to go ahead and sync?
3, 2, 1.
Let's get started. So now we have Teardown, which is basically just take all these lights, all these stands and tripods, put them away, and then we have to coil up the cords. This is one of the best purchases I feel like I ever made. Is there's these little, I don't know what you call them. What would you call this? Velcro twist tie, Ellie? To wrap up cords. It's something if you worked in IT, it was really big. But that's the biggest part of managing it. It's just there's so many cords and they all just tangle. Being able to wrap these up and just throw them around is a big deal.
Alright, once I'm done there, I go into my editor and import all the files and do some simple things to set up the waveforms. From there, it's actually a really easy job to sync up the files. I load it up and look at the waveform for the giant spike and the 3, 2, 1. And I set a little cue mark where that happens so that they are all synced together at the same point. From there, it's really easy to create what's called an edit. It's my basic timeline. It's the final version of the podcast that I will be working on. And I can just go ahead and hit make, and it'll actually sync those all up for me. From there, I pop open all 3 windows, and then it's a simple matter of playing them, and I can simply click on any one of these windows to get the view I want at any point in the podcast. This usually takes about a full hour based on the length of the podcast, but isn't really that tough overall. From there, I export it and upload it to YouTube. Before getting to this stage, usually I like to take 5 minutes, just paste this all into text doc, usually while I'm waiting for it to export. And then I just come in here, put some simple tags, and copy everything in. For the thumbnail, I usually make it whenever I have some extra time, like when I'm waiting for an export, and I just slap that in here, and it's pretty easy. As for the audio podcast, what I like to do is I use a service called Libsyn, It handles all the RSS feeds, and I basically paste in the same info and a audio version I make using a program called Audacity. I essentially rip the audio file from the main video, and then I just use a couple different size versions of the thumbnail and upload it for the same date. Usually about a day or so after the podcast, I come in and archive it once I confirmed everything's good. What that means is I delete everything except the original footage. Then I come in here and I compress it just using a simple zip to a separate hard drive. Once that's done, it usually takes about 30 or so minutes, I just retest to make sure it's good, and then I delete the original footage. It's too big to save in my recycling bin, so once I delete it, it is permanently gone. It's too big to keep around, but overall, haven't had any issues yet. That's a podcast.